What does it mean to be a woman? Before I start, I want to tell you that every photo that you're gonna see here, it's come out directly from the project we did called Woman Mixed Technique. What does it mean to be a woman? It's a question I always ask myself. What obligation or what benefits do I have? What do I need to do differently than if I was a man? What behaviors are expected of me? It was March 8th, and I felt sad and frustrated, yet accompanied. I was surrounded by 100,000 women singing and raising their voices together in a march that takes place every year in Latin American countries. This march aims to highlight the complexity of being a woman in our countries, where social injustice and the gap between being a man and being a woman, it's very high. So that energy ignited my desire to change reality. Maybe not across all the country, but at least in my own circle. I'm Helen Marcos. I grew up in the Mexican Jewish community, where the most common phrase you hear people say to a baby girl is, "May we see you as a bride." That implies that the most important thing of her life is to get married and start a family. And that it's not a bad thing. I have a partner and children, but is that what being a woman is all about? I think that question has many more answers. So I decided to create a project to validate and understand all the different ways of being a woman. My friends always tell me that when I'm in an existential dilemma, instead of talking about it, I create big projects. So I got in touch with a friend of mine called Suli Mitrani. She's an art curator, and she, with her visual wisdom and her organizational skills, and me with my curiosity of stories and my people's skills of managing teams, we directed all the project together. And we arrived quickly at the how, because at that time, we had been representing stories through playback theater for more than 10 years. And then, when the pandemic arrived, we moved our theater to Zoom, and there we discovered new ways of representing stories, like drawings and poems. So we decided to invite female writers, painters, and photographers to represent other women's stories. So we put out a call, and we needed 40 people, and we received more than 150 mails. So we even got lucky to decide who we wanted to participate in our project. This was the team. And the next question was, who do we interview? And the answer was simple: anyone and everyone. We didn't want to select someone special, or the top 100 women on their field, or somebody who changed the world, but any woman within this community, and all with different profiles. We wanted to show diversity in ages, ideologies, sexual orientation, spirituality, motherhood, non-motherhood, ways of life, stories about growth, about violence, about addiction, abuse. We wanted to show personal success, familiar success, professional success. And then we put out another call. If you're a woman and you want to share your story, contact us. If you know someone who wants to share their story, nominate her. We receive far more stories than we can tell, and our filter includes one story from each profile and one story from each group of experiences, so that all the voices could be heard. Okay. So we made teams of 4, a writer, an interviewer, a painter, and a photographer. So the interviewer sat with the interviewee in a Zoom meeting, trying to explore her personal, sexual, community, social, spiritual life, because we wanted the interview to be as comprehensive as possible. And the one question everybody needs to answer was, what does it mean to be a woman for you? Tell us a story or an idea that represents that response. These are the interviews, by the way. And with that videos, with that recording, the artist made 3 representations. A text that could be narrative or a poem or a story, a painting that could be literal or abstract, and a photograph. So why art? A lot of people ask that question. It's because art has the power to depict different stories without judgment, only by honoring them. So people who saw it couldn't be offended or criticize it because it's art, and art connects people. So we were representing controversial stories and inviting people to connect instead of giving opinions and judgments for other people's life. So at the end, we made this beautiful book. If you want to see it, you can come to me afterwards. And in this book, we had 300 pieces of art representing the 100th story of the women. But why should we talk about the end when we can talk about also about the process and the unique moments we live during all the projects? So I'm going to tell you some of that special moments. So a woman from the LGBTQ plus community came to me when we're going to open the exhibition, and she shared with me her story. My favorite part was that when she was a little girl, they said to her, "Do you want to convert to Judaism?" And she said, "Of course." And people were like, okay, she's an 8-year-old, why she's so secure about this? And the reason was that there were lollipops in the room, and she thought that if she said yes, they're going to give her a lollipop. So she came to me before the exposition, and she told me, "My wife is very nervous because all the bosses are going to be here in the exhibition. So she could be fired for being pictured with another girl as her partner." And I say, "Okay, look at me. Don't worry." And we were standing there for a moment, and she smiled at me. And then we realized this wasn't just a project. This turned into a community of women who honor, respect, value, and fight for each other's stories. I work very close with the artists, especially with the writers. So there was a writer that she was struggling how she connected with the stories, because she was a children's songwriter, and she had to represent the most complex stories in all the project. Stories about mental health issues, losses of loved ones. And she told me, "How can I write about this when I always write about the amazing things of life?" And she wanted to do it right. So after countless of drafts, she wrote the most moving poems in all the project, finding there's also beauty in pain. And at the end of the project, she sent me a very touching message that says, "Thank you for inviting me to explore new worlds within my world. It changed my life." The last story, it's about the connection from the women and the artist. So a painter who heard the story, she wanted to represent metaphorically the story with a hummingbird. This is the painting. So when the interviewee saw it, she said, "I could not believe this." her skin tingled, and she said to the painter, "Let me show you something." She lifted her clothes, and then she revealed a hummingbird tattoo in her skin, meaning that she always identified herself with this metaphor, and the painter didn't know it. So it was like a profound connection between the two of them and the project, so it was beautiful. So after 2.5 years of hard work, we opened the exhibition. This was the first day that the woman and the artist met. It was 20 days of workshops, stories, art, performances, music, theater, celebrating and honoring women with more than 2,500 people. Yeah, this was the exhibition. So, after the exhibition ended, we wanted to donate the money to a project called Dignified Menstruation to make more waves of what we were doing. This project teaches women in rural communities how to do feminine hygiene products with natural materials. So the woman doesn't have to pause their lives when the period comes. And now, to make more waves, we are developing an emotional support group model for women in rural communities. So, at the end of this project, I have a tradition that I like to the project. So, I always said to people, I want you to share with us, what do you take away from the experience? What do you learn? So, that day, I invited them to share with this phrase, I don't want to live without saying. And everybody who has been involved with the project need to share. So I'm going to share with you what I shared that day, that I said, I don't want to live without saying that during this project, I healed, shared wounds I didn't even know I had. So I invite you later, when you go home, you can talk with your partner or friends. What did you take away from today's event? So now I still wonder, what does it mean to be a woman? After so many answers, we discover that each woman is unique. We realize that it's important to honor not just ourselves, our ideologies, and our personality, but also others equally. We realize that it's important to make these kind of spaces, to share stories of women, because that will allow the next generation to choose how to be and how to live. So now I ask you, what can we do to make more waves of impact? What can I do and what can you do to improve the lives of others? Thank you for listening.